Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and with the introduction of the all-new iPhone 14 series devices, specifically the iPhone 14 Pro and iPhone 14 Pro Max, there's a bunch of new features. I wanted to share with you 14 settings you need to know and that you might want to change on your new device. The first thing has to do with a boot up sound. Similar to what we have with a Mac, there's now a boot up sound and a shutdown sound. So take a listen on the 14 Pro that I have here. We'll unlock it. Let's turn it off, volume up, volume down, press and hold the power sleep wake button, and let's slide off the power button. You can hear what the sound is when it shuts down, and we'll give it a moment and then we'll boot it back up so you can hear what it sounds like when you boot up. It's slightly different. Now you can hear what it sounds like when it boots up or shuts down. This is great for accessibility users that may want to know when their phone is shutting down or turning on, and Apple has put the setting under accessibility. So if you go to your settings, go down to accessibility, then go to audio/visual, you'll see the setting here. Power on and off sounds. Play a sound when iPhone is powered on and off. Turn that on if you want to hear a sound when your phone is powered up or turned off. Now with the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max, we have an always-on display. Some people may not like this. In fact, my wife and my daughter both don't like this feature, see it as sort of pointless, and want to turn it off. You can disable this, although it does use a little bit of power. It's not that much. So let's go ahead and turn it off. So if you want to disable it, all you need to do is go back into your settings, go to Display and Brightness. Under Display and Brightness, you can see Always On. Turn always on, off, and now the display will just shut off. So if that's something you want to disable, you can disable that, or of course you can keep it on. With the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max, we have a major upgrade to the main sensor this year. We have a 48 megapixel camera, but in order to get the most out of that camera, we need to enable some settings. Typically, when you're taking a photo with the main sensor, it will take the images in 12 megapixels, taking 48 megapixels worth of information and condensing them down into 12 megapixels. If you want the full image, we need to go into our settings. In settings, scroll down to your camera settings. Under Camera, tap on Formats, and here you'll see Apple ProRAW. Enable Apple ProRAW, and now we can select the resolution from 12 megapixels to 48 megapixels. Now keep in mind this is going to use additional space as these are very large files, but if you want to get the most out of your photos and your videos and things like that, you'll need to enable some different settings. So you'll see here it says a ProRAW file will be approximately 25 megabytes at 12 megapixels or 3 times the size at 75 megabytes at 48 megapixels. So you can enable this to get the most out of your camera. Of course, you don't have to if you don't want to. Also, we have a new cinematic mode this year where we have cinematic mode that's improved but goes up to 4K. Before it was 1080p, and if you always want it to default to 4K, under your photo or camera settings, go to Record Cinematic and change this to either 4K 24 or 4K 30. Whatever you prefer, select what you want, and it will always be enabled in case you forget to actually change it. I ran into that myself when doing some initial tests with this. Also, we have a new action mode this year, and within the camera, if we go into camera and we're under our video settings, tap on the little settings arrow here, and you can enable action mode here. We can enable action mode, and again, make sure that you're at 4K when you're using action mode, as it will compress everything down. You can change that to HD, but make sure that you're on 4K to get the best settings out of this. It works really well, and if you're maybe running across a yard, you can see it shake with not using it, or when you're enabling this, it actually takes a lot of that shake away. It's pretty amazing, and definitely something you need to make sure you're using 4K for. But there's also one more part to the action mode where you can use it in low light, but you have to turn on a setting. And below Formats, under Record Video, tap on that setting, scroll down, and you'll see a new setting for Action Mode Lower Light. Action Mode will decrease the stabilization to optimize for less bright scenes. So you can still use Action Mode even though you don't have a super bright maybe situation, whether you're being indoors or maybe you're outdoors and the sun is going down and you want to capture some footage. Turn that on and it will help you out with that. Now also within the camera, if you're taking photos, there's something you may want to consider changing. If you post to social media a lot like I do, or maybe you're making a thumbnail for YouTube, you'll see here we have the aspect ratio under our settings many people aren't aware of. So make sure you're on photo, Tap the little settings arrow on the other side of the camera, and then you'll see the aspect ratio. You can choose 16:9 that I use, as that's perfect for thumbnails on YouTube and other things. We have square, similar to what we would have on Instagram. And then we also have options for, let's go back here to 1:1 to 16:9. So 16:9, 4:3, and square. You can use either one of those in any of your camera modes. Something I highly recommend changing if you take a lot of photos, just for different aspect ratios. Of course, you don't have to change that at all, but if you want to, it makes it easy. Now, one thing you may have already noticed is I have the battery percentage in the upper right. You may not have this enabled by default, and it's on all the phones with iOS 16 this year. If you want to enable that yourself, go back to your settings, scroll down until you find battery. Under battery, you'll now see battery percentage. So it will enable this, or you can leave it off and it's just a typical battery, and then you have to actually go into your control center to see your battery status. If you want to enable it, turn it on and you'll have the new battery indicator. With the introduction of the new Pro models, Apple replaced the notch with the dynamic island. One small tip is that you may want to hide this if you really don't like it. You can easily do that by changing the wallpaper. If we move over using our lock screen to the astronomy wallpaper, it completely hides it. So if we go home, you can't see it at all. So I would suggest using a completely black wallpaper at the top, which hides all of the pixels and hides the dynamic island almost completely, with the exception of the camera lens. We'll swap back here, and a couple things you may or may not already know is how to use the dynamic island. Maybe if you're playing some music, we'll just play a song here, and if we swipe home, it goes to the top. If we tap on the dynamic island, it opens the app back up that we were using. If we long press it, it will open up the media player. So keep those things in mind. I just wanted to share that in case you haven't figured that out yet or didn't see that elsewhere. Maybe that'll help you use that a little bit more. Now let's go ahead and close that out. One thing I would highly recommend trying out, if you haven't already, that's part of iOS 16 but also on the new iPhones that you may not be aware of, is the haptic keyboard. Anytime you type, you can actually feel feedback from the keyboard. So if I type, "Hi, how are you today?" I've actually had this on for a while. You can feel every single tap. And if you want to enable that, go into your settings, go to Sound and Haptics, then scroll down and you'll see keyboard feedback. Under keyboard feedback, enable haptic, and you'll be able to feel that. If you don't like it, of course, you can just turn it on and it goes back to how it always was, but it's something I would highly recommend you try out. With the introduction of the new iPhone 14 series models, all of them have a new car crash detection mode, along with Apple Watch as well on the new Apple Watches. It uses the accelerometer, barometric pressure, as well as the microphone to detect when you're in a car accident or a crash. Based off that information, it will place a call to emergency services. If you don't want it to do this, you can actually disable this by turning it off. So if you want to do that, go into settings, go down to emergency SOS, and within emergency SOS, you'll see it says call after a severe crash. Turn that off and it will disable that feature. However, the sensors will still be picking that information up, as those are always active. But I would not recommend disabling emergency SOS features unless you absolutely have to. There is no battery savings with that, so just keep that in mind. Now, if you're someone that uses Siri a lot, with iOS 16, they've added a couple features that I think are very helpful that you should know about. The first one is you can use Siri to send a message, but you no longer have to confirm that message. Again, within your settings under Siri and Search, you have some new options here under Automatically Send Messages. Tap on Automatically Send Messages and then turn on that feature, and it says Siri will automatically send messages unless you ask to change or cancel. And then it can work either with headphones or with CarPlay. So that's something you can just confirm a message when you're replying to someone, and it will just send automatically. It's super helpful. Also, Siri can hang up phone calls this year. So you'll see here again in the same main menu, we have Call Hang Up. This allows you to hang up your phone call using Siri and then the word "Hey" in front of it. So that's supported during phone calls and FaceTime calls as well. So that's something that could be very helpful that Siri couldn't do before. With the 14 Pro and Pro Max, we have a super bright display this year that goes up to 1600 nits in HDR video. However, maybe it's late at night and you don't want to watch HDR video, it's too bright. I often record HDR video with these cameras, but sometimes it's just too bright at night. There's an easy way to disable this. So maybe you're watching it on YouTube or Safari. You can see here's my video, and this one's actually in HDR. So if we tap the little gear settings icon here, you can see the different resolutions up to 2160p or 4K in HDR. However, an easy way to disable this and get back to SDR footage is just turn on low power mode. So if you turn on low power mode, whether that's in the control center, your battery settings, go back, you'll see here, if we go back, reload, we're in the same video here, tap the little gear icon, and the HDR options are now gone. So now we can watch it in SDR. It won't be as bright and will be easier on our eyes later at night. That's a tip for anyone using an iPhone or an iPad. Just put it in low power mode and it disables that altogether. So it's really nice, especially if you're posting HDR footage and you want to see what it looks like in SDR as well. And so those are 14 tips to help you with your all new iPhone. Of course, there's much more you can do with it. And if you'd like to see more of these videos, let me know in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, I'll link it in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.